and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about what it means when you have your natal Saturn in Gemini or in the third house. So Saturn is the planet that likes to make things hard for us. It likes to make things somewhat inaccessible. We have to apply a lot of attention, focus, and effort onto this area of our life that Saturn essentially governs in order to access the benefits of what it represents. Wherever Saturn lays in your natal chart, you will experience restriction. The sign and house it is in will indicate to you where you will experience your biggest challenges in life. But the thing about Saturn is that, yes, it's the planet of challenges, but I also see it as a planet of reward. But unlike Jupiter, which is a planet that just brings rewards wherever it goes, Saturn only rewards those who deserve it. Saturn only rewards those who become responsible and are willing to learn the lessons associated with what it's trying to teach. What can often happen is we can have a very difficult time dealing with what Saturn represents in our life up until about 30 years old. And then when we undergo our first Saturn return, if our Saturn is well aspected and if we are willing to take the responsibilities on that it's trying to teach us, we really start reaping the rewards and benefits associated with what it represents. But this doesn't always happen to everybody. Some people really struggle to connect with the lessons it's trying to teach, and they might be avoidant and hesitant in dealing with the Saturn-themed things in their life. Gemini is a sign that is ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of communication. Gemini is a sign that loves to take information from one side and then to expose it to the other side that hasn't seen it yet. Gemini is a very communicative and a very expressive sign. If you're interested in learning more about Saturn and its role in astrology and in your life path, then consider buying my ebook. My ebook is called Saturn's Impact on Your Life Path, and in this book, I dive deep into Saturn, how it creates challenges in your life, and how you can actually overcome them. If you're interested in checking it out, click on the link in the description to this video. So what happens when Saturn is placed in a naturally expressive and communicative sign or house like Gemini or the third house? This means that your base restriction in life is expressing yourself. Saturn will cause a lot of self-doubt in how you communicate, and there is a lack of confidence in your ability to communicate. So this means that Saturn kind of silences you and you're not as expressive and open and verbal as you'd wish to be. Maybe you feel awkward, maybe you feel like you don't know how to articulate your communications, or maybe you just feel like everyone in your life is constantly shutting you down. Whatever it may be, Saturn can cause restrictions that can either stem from you internally or externally in your life that makes it difficult for you to just speak. Because Saturn is a malefic, what Saturn also does when it's placed in a sign is amplify that sign's negative qualities. One dark side to Gemini, because they're ruled by Mercury, and this is something that Virgos also struggle with, is constantly overanalyzing and overthinking things. So when Saturn is placed in Gemini, you're consistently overthinking and overanalyzing what you should say or what you've said. Maybe you say something and then you say to yourself, oh my goodness, I should not have said that, that's so awkward. Or you don't even speak because you're so over-analytical about what you're going to say that you can't find the perfect thing to say. So there's a strong hesitation to speak up and really express their voice. Because of this, what can often happen is these individuals can mirror other people's opinions. They can go along with what other people are saying because they're quite hesitant to disagree with it. They're hesitant to actually let their opinion be known. Communication can just be a real nightmare to deal with for these people, and they're constantly overthinking and feeling really awkward in scenarios where they have to communicate. So with Saturn in Gemini, there's a very strong fear of articulating your thoughts and ideas. Gemini's natural tendency is to communicate freely and openly, but Saturn's restrictive nature causes a clash, leading to a lot of doubt and hesitancy in how you communicate. These individuals experience a lot of uncertainty that causes them to second guess the value of their words or the correctness of their information. They really suffer from analysis paralysis. Overthinking is such a big challenge. So while Gemini's curious mind loves to analyze, Saturn can really push this trait to the extreme, leading to situations where these people really feel stuck on their thoughts and unable to decide or act. So during childhood or adolescence, these individuals might have felt that their voice was suppressed, leading to a pattern of staying silent even when they had something valuable to say or contribute. The adults in their lives might not have really listened to them or constantly silenced them. What could have happened when they were younger is their opinions weren't seen as valid, and they were overpowered by the adults in their life and their opinion. So because of this, a Saturn and Gemini individual could have a tendency to echo the opinions and beliefs of those around them, especially when they're young, due to a lack of confidence in their own thoughts and fearing judgment. So they could have been told that what they believe isn't important, and they were told to focus on something else that maybe is more important, or told that something else is more important. And because of this, they actually put a lot more emphasis on other people's opinions and beliefs than their own. If you're constantly living in a dynamic where you're told that what you're thinking is not important and that something else is more valid, you're going to eventually believe that your thoughts and opinions and feelings are completely invalid. So speaking in front of others, whether in a class or small groups, can be a very big source of anxiety. These people can really stutter and be nervous when they have to do such things, and they try their best to avoid such situations completely. However, as they age and as they mature, most Saturn and Gemini individuals find their unique voice and learn the value of clear, thoughtful communication. So Saturn and Gemini really gives you a fear of speaking, a fear of writing, a fear of expressing, and a fear of really sharing your genuine thoughts. This could even lead to these individuals hiding their true selves and their true beliefs from their closest loved ones. If you have Saturn in Gemini, it could be easier for you to kind of voice other people's opinions and mirror them. But this also causes people around you to not really truly know you and to not really truly know what your actual beliefs are. Some people with Saturn in Gemini will really downplay their intelligence, even though their intellect is really sharp. When Saturn and Gemini individuals are young, they need to be really careful to not be pushed or swayed into the wrong direction, because they put so much more emphasis and value into what another person is telling them to do or another person is telling them to believe. They can actually create an entire life for themselves and get involved in an entire social group that is entirely out of line with their true authentic self. When this happens, these people live in a persistent state of anxiety. And because it's so difficult for them to actually stand their ground, they're just super agreeable. They kind of agree with what everybody else is telling them, and they do what everybody else is telling them without maybe saying, hey, wait, this isn't right for me. Even though they might feel really uncomfortable in a situation, they literally ignore that voice or that part of themselves that tells them that they're uncomfortable, because they don't even put that much value into their own inner voice. They'll just suppress that voice in their head that tells them that this isn't right or that they're uncomfortable, because they'll believe that where the other person is leading them is where they should be and what's best for them. Often as children, those with Saturn and Gemini on the third house were very introspective, and they could have been very quiet or possibly had a stutter and struggled with their verbal speech. Many of these people actually needed to go for speech classes and needed a lot more help learning how to speak and to write. They also might have really struggled to communicate as children, and the adults in their life might have thought there was something wrong with them. However, most of the time, these individuals grow up in a dynamic where the adults in their life are so overbearing and overpowering in their voices and their opinions that they leave no space for anyone else to say anything or to feel anything. What eventually happens is a Saturn and Gemini individual has so many inner struggles regarding articulating and expressing themselves that they start putting a lot of thought and a lot of emphasis into finding ways to communicate as they age and mature. They might be aware of how they're hesitant to reveal their true selves and might start doing a lot more inner work to reveal their true selves around their Saturn return. When they eventually master the lessons of Saturn and Gemini, these people become so expressive that they do not hold back at all. However, this usually only comes to them later on in life, unless their Saturn might be really well aspected. What's interesting is that even though these people might be hesitant to express their personal opinions, they make really good journalists, fantasy writers, script writers, MCs. The reason for this is because they actually have a lot of skill in communication. What happens when these people overcome the hurdles that Saturn brings with this placement is they can become journalists, they can become writers, they can become public speakers, internet personalities. Because once they access the positive traits of Saturn in Gemini, they find out the best, most refined way to articulate themselves. Once they overcome Saturn's challenges and hurdles, and they really put the work in to learn how to communicate and express themselves, whether it be creatively or professionally, they can actually master it better than most people. One thing I believe in life is that our strengths usually stem from a weakness. So the strength of being a master at communication and expressing yourself will only come from the weakness of not knowing how to. And then only when you have that weakness will you put the time, the effort, and the energy into mastering it. Saturn is also essentially a planet that represents mastery. So when you can unlock its limitations, you can really master what it represents. What Saturn and Gemini individuals need to do is really commit to what sparks a fire in them and confront their insecurities head on. They must dedicate time to honing their talents and skills. Although they might struggle with the spontaneous nature of Gemini's expression, diving into the vast ocean of words and expression is essential. They mustn't over-censor their thoughts prematurely, and they must aim to become a walking thesaurus, embracing the vastness of language but also knowing when to pause. Saturn is a guardian, but for them to achieve their potential, they need to negotiate with Saturn and confidently take control of their narrative. So if you know someone who has Saturn in Gemini, inspire them to find the perfect words that resonate with their thoughts and their ideas. If you know a child who has Saturn in Gemini, fill their life with books, games, and stimulating mind activities. Let them play with word puzzles and all sorts of activities that really stimulate their minds and teaches them words. If you know anyone who has Saturn in Gemini, you really need to be patient with them. You need to give them time to collect and articulate their thoughts. Don't interrupt them and give them the space to really navigate their conversations at their own pace. The internal scribe of a Saturn in Gemini really wants to be heard, and their journey really won't be complete until they find their expressive outlets. So while the early experiences of these individuals will be filled with insecurities regarding speaking, as they age, their speech becomes so refined that it can give you goosebumps. Often, people say that Gemini can be a superficial sign that really only wants to touch on the surface of things. But when Saturn is in Gemini, these individuals love to have incredibly deep, meaningful conversations. Often the reason they're so hesitant in expressing themselves is because they don't feel comfortable enough around the people they're with to really express their true selves. But when they are comfortable, and when they feel that they can be who they are with someone, they love to have some of the most incredibly profound conversations filled with depth and mystery. Their minds are very busy and their minds think very deeply. The biggest challenge with this placement is recognizing your unique voice and trusting in its value. You might have to seek help from mentors or even go to therapy to overcome some really deep-seated communication fears. Once you overcome your fears, however, you do not only excel in your field, but you also inspire others with similar struggles. Your journey of struggling can become a testament to others that growth and mastery is attainable. In relationships with Saturn and Gemini, there can be somewhat of a protective barrier when it comes to sharing thoughts and feelings. For the early part of their life, they can really struggle with relationships and intimacy because intimacy requires sharing your authentic self with another. But if these individuals struggle to do that, finding a fulfilling relationship can be very challenging. However, once they initially overcome that, Saturn and Gemini individuals can make some of the most understanding partners because they themselves know how difficult it can be to really share what's going on in your heart and mind. And they will encourage their partner to do the same. However, if they are not healed, they might silence their partner because their partner speaking their truth and them being unable to do so themselves can really make them feel uncomfortable. So this is my video on Saturn in Gemini and the third house. Do you have Saturn in Gemini or the third house, and can you relate to what I've said? Do you know someone who might struggle with these challenges? Let me know in the comments. Leave a thumbs up on this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. I've added the links to my socials and my website in the description to this video if you'd like to see what I'm up to and to connect with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.